We're going to spend some time focusing just on adolescence because it is a very special case, and a lot of people move into teaching in the secondary area of education, dealing with teenagers full-time. So we're going to look at some of the ins and outs of working with adolescents. There are characteristics about adolescence that we need to look at and kind of prepare ourselves for. Who are these creatures and why are they doing what they're doing? Now, admittedly, you can look at young teenagers very differently from older teenagers, and we won't be getting too much into that, but I think you'll see as we go through some of these checklists here why older teenagers are different quite a bit from younger teenagers. Okay, what are some of the things that happen in adolescence? Well, egocentricity comes along. Now, we talked about egocentricity when we were talking about Piaget at the very earliest stages, but now it's a different kind. It's more of an emotional egocentricity. And adolescents reveal this in some of the behaviors and attitudes that they have. For instance, the personal fable, only I have felt this way. Only I have had this to deal with. And of course, we all know there are a million others going through the same thing at the same time. But to the teenager, only I have this to deal with. And it can be very intense. For many teenagers, a sense of invincibility. Okay, I know this is risky, I know it's dangerous, but hey, what could happen? Another sign, another side of egocentricity is this concept of imaginary audience. Everybody notices me, okay? I got a pimple, I got a new earring, something's changed and everybody's noticing me. Oh my gosh. They'll notice me. So a lot of times this imaginary audience is judging the teenager, okay? And the teenager is sort of inwardly cringing about being judged, when in fact, nobody's paying much attention at all because they're all standing around with their own imaginary audiences. You can't convince them of that necessarily. There's also, because of the search for identity during this period, there's a lot of exploration of social status. What group do I belong to? What groups do I get along with? And some psychologists put basically 4 general kinds of groups, of social groups. There's the popular group. There's the rejected group. There's the controversial group and the neglected group. I mean, obviously these are very overgeneralized, but these are particular kinds of groups that teachers often need to look at and focus on to see, okay, how are they interacting within their group and how are they interacting among groups? One of the things that research has come up with is the idea that when teachers and parents present themselves as authorities, okay, authoritative on a consistent basis in the way they raise their teenagers and the way they teach their teenagers, this authoritative approach is best for helping teenagers feel well-adjusted in the world. Now that's authoritative as opposed to authoritarian. Authoritarian is like big boss telling you what to do, my way or the highway sort of thing. And then there's also the neglectful or the laissez-faire teacher or parent who just kind of lets the teenager kind of figure it out for themselves. No, this authoritative approach where there's a sense of authority, I know what's best, but I'm going to give you some leeway here as long as you can handle it. That kind of approach seems to work very well for teenagers, especially middle-class teenagers. Other classes may be a different mix of authoritative, authoritarian, laissez-faire works better. But for middle-class children, this tends to work best. There are all the identity issues, as we've already noted before, regarding teenagers. There's the whole identity, sexual identity. What is my sexual orientation? What do teenage boys do? What do teenage girls do and not do? They build up concepts, and they have to sometimes experiment with, well, what do I really mean, and what do I really stand for, and what's really comfortable for me? There's also identity issues dealing with the fact that they can see the adult world approaching, and they're starting to think about occupation, careers. What's going to happen when I leave high school? And maybe even getting a little grip on starting to plan, what does it mean to transition into adulthood? Is it going to mean college, full-time, part-time? What's it going to mean? Is it going to mean living at home for a while? Or am I going to be able to be more independent? And start thinking ahead about these sorts of things, because it is a part of identity. And then identity issues related to values and lifestyle choices. I am not my parents. I don't have to be like my parents. I don't have to be like my family. I don't even have to be like my older brother or sister when they went through this period of life. So there is a sense of wanting to experiment and wanting to find that sense of who I am and what I value. Another researcher named Marcia came up with a way to look at all this identity searching. And he put it in terms of status. Now, he wanted to make it very clear. Status is not the same as stages. Stages are things that are kind of concrete, built in. You have to get through this stage to get to this stage, to this stage, to this stage. What Marcia realized about identity was that teenagers don't go through stages, but they do go through a varying kind of nebulous reaching out and trying ideas, a different status that you can, if you took a snapshot at any given moment in a teenager's life, they would be at a certain status in terms of their identity. Next week, the status might change. It might revert. It might go on to another status. You never know. So what are these? These are categories of identity experimentation and trial and error on the road to something stable and a direction that says, yeah, from now on, that's who I am, and I move on from there. So what are these statuses? Well, there are some teenagers who are in the status of foreclosure. They've already decided, I'm going to be just like this. I'm going to be just like my parents were. I'm going to pursue the same career as so-and-so. I have already decided who I am, what I stand for, and I know I'm only 14 years old, but this is what I'm going to do, this is who I am, and this is where I'm going. And to Marcia, this was a sense of foreclosure. Like as if he were saying to the teenager, are you sure at the age of 14 you really want to make this decision and stick with it? But some people are going to stick with it. Another status is diffusion, where the teenager is still looking around, is still confused about who I am, what do I stand for? And there's the moratorium status. Now, the moratorium status is, well, I'm not exactly confused, I'm still trying things. I might, and then again I might over here, but I'm not sure yet, but at least I'm trying. And the fourth status for Marcia is achievement. I have achieved my sense of myself, my values, my worth, my sexual career focus and identity. I know who I am, I have settled. But I have settled only after a bunch of confusion and a bunch of experimenting and a bunch of questioning. And now I have achieved something. So these are some of the things that we have to kind of always keep in mind when dealing with teenagers. Adolescence is a time of turmoil, and people who work with teenagers recognize this, and it's good to be able to put labels sometimes to identify, oh, that's what this teenager is going through right now, and that's what I am having to deal with as I help this teenager get through the current perception or the current crisis. So, you might want to review your own adolescence to see how you managed all these various terms and concepts, and you might want to observe some people who are now teenagers themselves. And then you'll want to check into the review questions, you'll want to check into supplemental readings, and learn more about all this because, as I say, adolescence is a very particular time of life with very particular and urgent needs and issues that need to be attended to. So, watch the video again, check out the supplementals, and help those adolescents.